Okay, well, this session we are going to learn about the RUP and Agile. We'll start with first RUP, and then after we complete RUP, then we will basically move towards the practical session, and then we'll come back for Agile. Okay, so that's the basically sequence we will follow for this particular chapter. Okay, so let me start with a bit of RUP, and here is the chapter what we are going to talk about. In the RUP we'll talk about the purpose, and then we will have some introduction about RUP, and then we will talk about the history and some the best practices of the RUP. There are six best practices, and then we will learn them in detail. Then we will learn the RUP process overview and the RUP phases. There are four phases. Like in SDLC, we have seen somewhere there are 5 phases, somewhere there are 9 phases, and somewhere there are 11 phases, depending on which book you refer. But all of them are correct actually, because some books they have clubbed a couple of phases together. Some books they have basically kept all the phases separate. So it depends on the author how he or she has explained. Okay, then at the end we will learn about the summary of RUP. So this is what we will be learning in the RUP. And in Agile we will learn about the Agile, and why Agile is so important in the today's the project management in the project management, and how it is beneficial for the corporates especially. And we will learn the value realization using the Agile methodologies, and how the values is realized from different perspective. And then we will learn what are the different methodologies are there in Agile. Then we will talk about the Scrum in detail. If you learn one of them, so you can basically apply that knowledge in other methodologies. That's fine, because in industry Scrum is most popular. So once you understand the Scrum principles and the characteristics, you will be able to use that easily in the real life situation. Okay, so that's the basically overview of today's learning. So let me first start with the purpose. Okay, so in when we're talking about the Agile, basically the sorry RUP, the RUP is a rational unified process. It's a software engineering process basically, and it provides a disciplined approach uh, for assigning the task and responsibilities within the project management. Its goal is basically to ensure the production of the high quality software solution that meets the need of the end user within the predictable schedule and budget. These are the three important factors what they have mentioned, because most of the projects are failed or could not achieve the required the performance or required the expectations when one of these are not basically achieved. These three are most important factor for the project. One is the meeting the needs of the end users. That's the most important. That's why the project goes on the floor. And the second is that it must be completed within the budget and within the schedule. Okay. And the RUP basically what we are going to refer is the document is created by IBM, who owns this basically the rational software. The rational unified process is a process product. Remember, this is a process product, or it is a software engineering process. Okay, and it is developed and maintained by rational software. And now the rational software is bought and maintained by IBM. So now it is IBM product. Many times I come across people interchangeably use a rational unified process with rational tool. These two are different. Remember, rational tool supports rational unified process. Again, rational tool which is owned by IBM, which is very expensive tool, although it is a fantastic tool which supports all the phases of the software development, and it helps basically the team to become more productive. But that is the license and all is a little expensive, so only the big organizations basically acquire those licenses and use them in the daily life. Okay. Now we talk about basically the RUP is enhances the team productivity. Okay, so this is something is very important factor, and we will learn all this the details around this part, why it enhances the team productivity. The reason this is every team has easy access with the knowledge base, with the guidelines, same guidelines and the template and the tool, and also it mentors all the team members. For example, if you have the BRD as a document, so that document is basically shared by every team members, so everyone has a common vision. So there is a transparency, common vision, and everyone will know what role they have to play within the project, right, when they see the common vision is there, right? So that is basically what we talk about, the transparency. When we talk about the template, it means that we use the same template for across the organization. So when you read the business requirement document from one division to then you read the other division, so you don't find much, you don't have much difficulties in understanding the documentations. So that's basically what's it, because the readers will have a pre-notion about how the document will be written, and they will know where and what to expect. Okay, then a second what we talk about is basically a guideline. They have the uniform guideline across the basically the team, so everyone follows the same guideline. So in this case, when we have the same knowledge base, no matter where you, what is your work, whether you are working with the requirement or design or the test or the project or the configuration management, everyone basically share the common knowledge and the process and the view of the development of the software, right? So everyone will have that common vision. So everyone will share the same knowledge, same language, same processes, same view of the future solution, right? So that is basically is building the common vision. Then the next point is emphasized on basically the RUP activates the activities create and maintain the models. It means that we are basically creating the models like use cases, test cases, or you could say the class diagrams and state diagrams. So there are various models are there, and the requirements and the is in a written description as well as in the models. So that is basically emphasizing more on what is required rather than having a large amount of documentations. Okay, so that helping the team to reduce the documentation and focus on the basically end delivery. It also provides a guide for how to efficiently use the UML, and UML is an industry standard language that allows clearly communicate the requirement, architectures and designs. We will be learning that towards the end of the training, and we will be creating how to basically model the requirement, and that will basically use to communicate the requirement, communicate the design, communicate the architectures. Okay, so that's basically what we will be learning, and we also will have a little bit of overview about use cases. That's high level use cases when we will start learning the solution scope. Okay, so that time we will see what is the high level use cases are there and how they are used. Okay, and next basically goes to we talk about the they talk about basically using the tools which will basically help the team members to uh, produce their artifacts easily. Okay, so that is what we talk about it. And RUP, even though IBM says RUP is a configurable process, that means it is suitable for all the software development, whether it is a small or large. But because of the cost, most of the small organizations can't afford that one. Okay, unless they are IT company and the IT is a core business. Okay. So next, basically, I'm going to emphasize here is bit of this is what we have already talked about. Okay, so this is what I would like to little bit emphasize about. RUP is basically has 6 best practices, and this is very important part of the learning. The first part we talk about the develop the software iteratively. If you remember the previously what we have seen in the waterfall methodologies, it has the everything is a sequentials, means one step we finish, then we go to the second step, then we go to the third, then we go to the fourth, then we go to the fifth and sixth and so on, right? So that is basically what we talk about the sequential, right? And then we will basically if there is any changes are there, we come back from the first step again, we start. But of course the sequence or the journey may not be that long, but it could be a shorter one. But that itself is a very tedious because of certain reasons, and one prominent reason is that that delays the whole process, and the team basically not very comfortable in accepting new changes at the later stage of this the life cycle. Okay, so now here when we talk about the software development, the develop the software iteratively, it means that we develop the software the iteratively and incrementally. Now the RUP, what it says is that it is in the given the today's the sophisticated software system, it is just not possible to sequentially first define the entire problem and design and the entire solution and then develop it and deploy it. It is not, it is difficult. So what it is, we will, when we explore the particular topic or subject or solution, we will come across additional new things, and those also need to be basically considered. And that is the only way. If we don't consider, then the quality of the software solution will not be as expected. So if you want to have a better quality and efficient solution, so we should have the mechanism to incorporate those requirements which we come across while exploring the requirement in detail at early or the later stage. So that is the only way we can basically ensure that there is a high quality product at the end. Okay, then we talk about basically the why the incremental and the what we call iterative approach is important. I'm just going to give you one example. uh, Let me just bear with me. Okay, here is a simple example we have come up with. It's may not be the appropriate, but it is at just give you a idea about how it could look like. Okay, for example, if you want to build a solution that's your the travel portal, then you have various components in that, right? So when you're looking at the various components, what happens in that case? So you will have to build the component, for example the flight booking, then hotel booking, then you are talking about the car booking. That is the basically component you have. And then of course you will have is the customer account, and then payment gateway, right? Payment. So these are the basically components you want to build. But if you want to see this whole project is going to take 24 months, for example, so it is very difficult for you to for the sponsors to basically fund the entire project and wait for the 24 months. And in case something goes basically wrong at the 24 months, then everything is not available. Okay, that's one thing. So here we have basically come up with one simple example here. And let me just open the Excel sheet. Over there it will look slightly better. I'm just going to share with you. Just bear with me. So here is the class notes. I hope you can see Excel sheet. For example, we have a travel portal. Just don't bother about the spell check. I'm just going to write the, okay. So you have to do is a flight booking. Then you have hotel booking. These are your basically requirement. Then you have is a car booking, customer account handling, and then you have a payment. For example, this takes about 4 months. I'm just giving this one. Hotel booking may take about 2 months. This may take 1 month. Customer account may take 2 months. Payment may take 1 month. Okay, so these are the various ways you can basically see, and if you may have some additional details, right? So how many months you are talking about? 2 plus sorry, here I'm just going to put it 6 in case if this is little more critical. So this, let's put as a 3. Let's justify that 24 months. Okay, so 6 plus 3 is 9, and 9 and 5 is 14 months. So let's see that this is a 14 months project, and then you can have additional, like for example, additional like holiday packages and maybe discounts and plus a reward, those like promotions. So this may be around 2 months. So we added about 14 to 18 months. For example, this is 18 months project. What will you do that in case if you want to basically you tell your sponsors to pay you a certain amount of money? For example, this could be like 2 million. Okay, so you ask them 2 million to build a solution, but when you reach to this level on this stage and before you deploy, then you come across a very large problem or maybe some minor problem. Then what happens? Are you going to roll back? If you roll back, what happens? That entire solution is not what you call available to anybody. Instead of that, you choose another way. That's basically, you say that I will going to go for incremental and iterative and incremental. So I will just say, in this case I'm going to basically put this A. So you may say that in the first iteration, okay, what you are planning to do is that you say that I'm going to take A plus D plus E, and I'm going to deploy in how many months it is? 6 and 2 and 1, that's 9 months. Okay, that's your first iteration. Second iteration, and you deploy that, and it is ready for the users to use it. So what is happening? This is you are giving the customers to use the flight booking, right? So what happened? There are A is that customers start using that flight booking. B, the organization start making the revenue at early stage. This is the 9 months, right? In the second iteration, you are going to take is a B, and that's basically B plus, of course you will have some bugs and fixes and some feedback from the customers. Then you want to basically enhance something, right? So I will talk about this as a this is plus, means these are enhancement. So whatever the bugs fixes are there, you are going to fix that first iteration, or you can just simply write first iteration, otherwise it will be very confusing here. right? So you are just giving them enhancement, right? So this is what you intend to do. So first iteration enhancement, you can just do that simply. So what is happening when you are deploying that after 3 months? You will have you will have is a the flight booking and hotel booking ready, and plus you have whatever the problems the customers have reported to you, you have already incorporated what all the technical issues which were not urgent, which were deferred to the next release, all of them have incorporated, and then you have an enhanced version of first iteration, that is first iteration plus. Then you have, this is the one is in 3 months. So what is happening in the 9 plus 3 is in 12 months, the organization is able to make money through the hotel booking and the basically the flight booking. In the third iteration, you don't have to again build the what we call the customer account and the payment. You can, whatever you have built, that you can basically use for the that can be reused. So the requirements have been reused. So here you are looking at as a C is the car booking, and then you are doing it is on the third. So in, if you see in this case, the 3 plus 2 plus uh, 9 plus 3 plus 2, it is how much? It is 14. Within the 14 months whole the solution is functional. But for some reason there are some issues are there, and the management says roll back. So what you will be roll back will, if there is some issue here at this stage, so your rollback will happen only at this stage. So your first two iteration will be up and running, only the rollback will be for the C. Okay, C in this case again you are going to have is a second iteration plus. So this is basically what you will be putting up. It's just not putting for one the what you call iteration, what you are putting for two. Okay, so this is the way you can basically deploy. So what are the benefits you are looking at here? A is that, let me go back to the Excel, the PowerPoint presentation. See, we are basically, we are trying to say is that you have basically it is easier for you to basically share the solution, and the customers are getting used to the solution slowly and steadily, and they are able to provide the feedbacks, and organization is able to basically start realizing the benefits at early stage. So the break even will be early, they don't have to wait for 24 to 36 months, right? So that's basically what are the benefits. What we talk about is iterative and the incremental approach. Another part what we talk about is basically RUP supports the iterative approach to develop that which addresses the highest risk item at early stage in the life cycle, significantly reduce the project risk profile. When you are doing iterative and incremental approach, you will come across the risk at early stage, and you'll be able to address them at early stage, since you are basically start developing right away at early stage, right? And also it will help you to attack the risk through demonstrable, progressive, frequent and executable releases. This is the most important factor, because otherwise what happens if you are talking about the team, say if the team receives a project and that project is to be delivered after 24 months, what happens in that case? If you are going to, then first 2 3 months nobody wants to work, because they will think that, oh, the delivery is after 24 months, right? But in that case, and then towards the end there will be huge rush, right? In order to keep that momentum, and also the what we the deliverables on going basis, so we want to, this iterative and incremental approach works well. Okay, I don't know if anybody remember, in India some of the colleges had the annual exams. In the annual exams, when they had, the students wouldn't buy the books for first 3 to 4 months, and they would buy the books after, then they would open the books after 6 months. Okay, and they will start reading, only actually seriously reading after the 2 months, or maybe in last 3 to 4 months, right? Even that is, I'm talking about a very positive situation, but many times that would be much less than that time they would basically provide. Okay, so this is basically what would happen is that the what we call the team wouldn't stay focused in delivering the solutions, right? That's what we talk about. So iterative and incremental approach helps the entire team to remain focused throughout the life cycle. Okay, so that's basically helping to build the qualitative and basically effective product at the end, and it also help the team to basically remain focused throughout the life cycle. Now the next I would talk about it basically is benefits of the iterative approach. This is what I just mentioned. Let me see about if any benefits I missed out. In the sequentially, if you see I'm sorry, earlier the numbers are bit different here, because the numbers here I have taken as a 3 months, point 0.5 months, point 0.5 months, customer account is 1 month, hotel booking 2 months, car booking 1 month. So the numbers are slightly different here, but you can, this is anyway the hypothetical situation. You could consider this also as the example. Then what we here the benefits we talk about is, if you develop the sequentially, 12 plus 3 months, that is accommodate the change during the development phase, plus 4 months, that is accommodate the change during implementation, becomes 19 months. So due the 12 months project will become 19 months, right? The risk for some reason, if the solution doesn't work, it has to roll back, then it is not available for the customers, the entire project is unavailable, and revenue will start generating only after 20 months. That's after considering this 9 months, right? 19 months, right? Then market share, it may take over 3 years to have a break even. That's basically what we're talking about. If you have iterative, then iteration 1, a b c d equal to 5, that's basically in 5 months. Flight booking is available in 6 months for the users to use. Then iteration 2, e plus updated iteration 1. Then iteration 3, f plus updated iteration 2. Iteration 4, holiday package plus updated iteration 3. If anything goes wrong here, the solution can be rolled back to the previous version, that is iteration 1, 2, 3 will be up and running. Revenue generation after 6 months. Benefits of an iterative approach. Compared to the traditional waterfall process, the iterative approach has the following advantage. Okay, so this word is basically, it's redundant here. Okay. Question? Okay, that's fine. Yes, please.
Uh, can you just let me know how to calculate the break-even point?
How to calculate?
Break-even point.
Oh, the break even. Okay. The break even is basically whatever you invest amount. For example, if you invest $100, and how much time it takes to basically recover that $100, and then that's your break even. And beyond that, then it's basically you make the profit.
Yeah, means I understood whatever is our cost uh, used for that product. To meet that cost, we call as break-even point. But in perspective of software, how do we calculate that break-even point? Because in other industry, like if we can see tea manufacturer, he pays for sorry, for tea powder, sugar, and milk, and particular his required gas and all. So for manufacturing 1 cup of tea, if that person is having 5 rupees cost and he is selling at 10 rupees,
Hmm.
then per day, if he is having 1 kilo tea powder, you can say like 250 rupees.
I understood. I
And you can
understood.
say, huh. So overall, if we can see per day, he needs a cost of consider 200 rupees. So uh, he need to sell those minimum 20 teacups. Then only he will have a break even point, and after 20 cups, he will have a profit, right?
Exactly. You're right. So here what we
So
say is
in
that,
that case. In perspective of software, how do we calculate? Means how to calculate exactly break-even point
Like
cost?
for example, here it is what we have mentioned here, cost is $1 million, right? We will do this an exercise when we start doing the benefit versus cost. Okay, so just bear with me. When we do that, first we are going to learn about how to prepare the business need document. After that we will start the vision document. Within the vision document we have how to calculate the break even in the software. So we will take, for example, we are going to take about online banking solution. So we will take each and every component and we'll calculate that. With the hypothetical, we'll take the numbers and we will calculate those numbers. Okay, and that is what we will talk about, how to basically calculate the break even. Okay, so just wait for a few minutes, we will cover that part later. That will be in detail.
Thank you.
No problem. So this is what we talk about. It's why when people ask us why this RUP is important, or iterative and incremental, the approach is important. So this is the various reason why we should basically consider that iterative and incremental approach. Next slide, we talk about the additional benefits. Okay, the risks are mitigated at earlier as defined in the document, and the changes are more manageable. For example, if you have any other, if you have some important changes to be introduced, if you have remember, we talked about the enhanced version, right? In this slide we talked about updated iteration 1 or updated iteration 2. So in this case you can basically include in any of the iterations, so changes can be handled easily. Okay, then we say that higher level of reuse. The reason now we talked about, for example, if you have created a calendar functionality for the flight booking, right? So the customers are using the calendar functionality to select the dates and book the flight. They can use the same calendar functionality for the car booking and hotel booking. So this is how you can basically reuse the software. Okay, so this is what I would like to do. And next point we talk about is basically project team can learn along the way. That's right, project team can learn along the way by going through all these basically improvements and enhancement, and everyone is basically are on the same page and everyone has the same knowledge base. For example, if I am as a business analyst, I'm able to see the requirement documentation, but I'm also able to see other documentation and able to basically access the knowledge base, and I see what project manager and other peoples are doing and able to be participate in other team the interactive sessions, right? So in these are the various ways we can enhance the knowledge. Okay, and overall the better overall quality, yes, the quality is better because if I know what exactly I want to do and I know what is the end goal is there, so it is very easy for me to basically start my work and knowing what is the end goal, so that my work will be planned accordingly. So earlier what would happen, the project manager would give a very little information to the team members depending on their relationship with the team member, right? And then that the person wouldn't know what is the end product is going to look like or what would be the end result, so they would not be able to plan their work accordingly, and then at later stage the things would not work out and things would get into trouble, right? So this is basically what we talk about it. And the second part, when we say the iterative and incremental, means the whole team is basically is focused on create working on particular iteration, and that's in a short release, so everybody remains highly focused and highly productive. That and then the deliverables are basically known to all of them at early stage. So that is basically when you are when you the deliverables are delivered on time, so that is also basically a moral boost for the stakeholders and also for the sponsor who are basically sponsoring that particular uh, the solution, right? So this is what this is how the um, it builds the quality product. Okay, next basically we're talking about the manage the requirement. That's the next the best uh, practices. When we talk about the manage the requirement, we talk about the RUP basically has a proper process, that is how to elicit the requirement, how to organize the requirement, how to document the required functionality and the constraint, and then how to track the document and trade-offs and the decisions, and easily capture and communicate the business requirement. So we do have a process which is basically defined in the BEBOK. The If you see, the earlier version of the BEBOK is based on RUP, but then they have never mentioned about RUP, but the RUP has basically but now they have enhanced quite a bit. The version number 3 is much more different than the RUP, what is mentioned in the RUP, but the earlier versions were quite similar. So when you look at that, so you will see that there is a process is there, eliciting the requirement, organizing the requirement in systematic way, and documenting those requirement, and in the function non-functional requirement, and how do we basically keep the version of all the documents and keep the record of those. Okay, so all of those basically is a standard process is mentioned. So that is basically help us to basically manage the requirement easily. Another part is basically they talk about the notion of use cases. It means that we ensure that the requirements are basically captured through the description as well as the use case and the scenarios. If you see use the agile, then you will see a lot of use case scenarios are there. Okay, user stories or the use case scenarios are basically used to describe the requirement. Okay, and then we talk about basically we ensure that these the requirement drive the design, implementation and testing of the software uh, till it is deployed and it fulfills the user requirement. So that is the basically goal. So throughout this process, the requirements are basically managed well. Okay, again remember, requirement document is not a static document, it's a dynamic, it will keep changing. Okay, uh, it will keep enhancing as and when it is required, not necessary always, but if it is required, it will be done. Then we have is a use component based architecture. That's the process focuses on the early development and the baselining of a robust executable architecture. Prior to committing the resources for the full scale development, it describes how to design a resilient architecture. Okay, and then uh, here the architectural diagram is not just one, but you may have a multiple architectural diagram, and that is achieved through the exploratory approach, so that you create few architectural diagram, present to the stakeholders, and the stakeholders will have some feedback, then again you come back and enhance it, and again present it. If that's basically may go through few rounds of basically the reviews and presentation till we reaches to the final stage. So this is what we talk about. And again, use component based architecture, it means that it supports the component based software architecture, and so one or more components can be reused. Okay, it can be reused, it can be from the existing solution, or the it could be basically the new. Okay, then we talk about basically is a visually model software. When we say the visually model software, it is basically it is a process that shows you how to basically visually model the software and capture the structure and behavior of the architecture and the components. This is basically nothing but it is talking about the UML. Okay, so UML is basically it is a abstract version of your the requirement, and it's like a pictorial version. So it is, as a human, it is easier to basically understand the pictorial representation rather than text. But and again, these use case have even though if it is abstract version, but it has some semantics and notations which are industry standards, and everyone will use the same one. Like for example, in the map, what happens when we say the north, right? So the north is common in every map and everyone knows that as a standard. Same thing happens in the UML as well. Say if you have a user as that person diagram, so that is used everywhere the similar way. Okay, so the standards are there and everyone will have same the understanding of that particular diagram. and again it is supported by the description of the requirement, so then the readers will have a less ambiguity, and it is not a subject to multiple interpretation, which is most important factor actually. Then comes to the verify software quality. Remember this verify software quality. This is poor application performance or the poor reliability are the common factors which dramatically inhibits the acceptability of the today's software application. Now the quality is extremely important, and especially in the today's dynamic world and dynamic and competitive world. If you don't deliver something quality today, somebody else will do it. So the quality matters a lot. If you remember this, and again in this case they said that the quality is a separate phase, like a testing is a separate phase in the waterfall methodology or sequential or the what we have seen the earlier traditional one. Okay, they all mean same. So when you're talking about in that is a separate phase, here the RUP has no phase for testing. This says testing is incorporated during the entire life cycle. It means that when you define the business need document, you go back to the stakeholder and present them and take the approval, so that stakeholder knows exactly what you have documented, and if there is anything wrong they will correct at that stage and approve it. Remember, these are the things happening every time there is a verification validation process is there at every stage. It is a whether it is a defining the business need document or a solution scope document, or if it is a planning phase, elicitation phase, documentation phase. Every phase we have verification validation process, including the development. So once you do the development of the software development is completed, that end of that also there is a testing and testing phase, that is basically ensuring that verification and validation of the code that is developed, and that is basically verified by the testing team as well as by the users. So that's why they talk about it as a quality assessment is built into the SDLC process. It also involves all participants using objective measurement and the criteria to assess each phase of, okay, and so that we build and we deliver the high quality product. Then comes to the most important factor is a control changes to the software. Now if you remember, the I keep using this word dynamic environment. Yes, this is a dynamic world, and the time change is inevitable. You will have the changes, and the ability to manage the change at any stage is most important factor. So that is only way to basically that will ensure that the solution will meet the stakeholders needs, because it is not possible to basically get all what we call visualize all the requirement at the beginning of the project. It also ensures that each change is acceptable, and being able to track the changes is essential in an environment, right? So that is again very crucial. It's not only change is acceptable, but how do we manage the change throughout the basically life cycle and able to track them. Okay, so that is basically is what is a help us to create the success stories. So describing this will help us to basically how to control and track and monitor the changes, okay, in effectively. Now as you have seen earlier, we talked about the if there are any changes, are there any enhancement is required, it is always can be taken care of during the next release, right? And the when you next release you what we call deliver, then you can basically see the enhanced version of the previous release can also be delivered at the same time. If you see your iPhone, it just iPhone or any phone, it keeps sending you what we the updated version of the software, right? So because they keep identifying some new vulnerabilities, new items or new things or new features, so they will definitely will send you those are the things, right? So this is what we talk about able to handle the change effectively. And this also basically guides how to establish a secure workplace for each developer by providing isolation from the changes made in other workplace, and by controlling the changes of all the software artifacts. Basically here artifact is a model code documentation. So we have a basically a repository what we create, and we ensure that we have all the record of the all the software codes, all the versions of the software codes, right? So if any issues are there, you can always go back and bring that particular piece of the code and basically use it. So if you see, we use the sources safe or SharePoint basically to archive all the older versions of the software and software code. Then we talk about basically it brings the team together to work in a single unit by describing how to automate integration and build management. Okay, there is one small the diagram I would like to show. Maybe it is slightly too small. It is you all can read this. Is it visible
Yeah, it is visible, but not able
cannot
to read properly.
now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. So in this case, if you see the diagram, what it is showing is that there are four phases in the RUP. First is inception, second is elaboration, third is construction, fourth is transition. So these are the phases are there, and the left hand side, if you see, there are the processes. One is a business modeling. So most of the part of the business modeling happens during the inception and the elaboration phase. Later it reduces. Okay. Then you have is the requirements. Then you have the requirements, if you see, during the inception and the elaboration, but it reduces slowly, and then in the elaboration and the construction and the very little in the transition phase. Analysis and design starts towards the end of the inception phase, and during throughout the elaboration phase the analysis and design work takes place. Also it takes in the construction phase there is some analysis and design work happens throughout the construction as well, but it is not as much as what you've seen in the elaboration. But in the transition phase it's very little work. And then it comes to the implementation work. The most of the implementation work starts towards the end of the inception and picks up during the mid of the elaboration phase, and implementation happens in the construction phase, most of that. And then if you see in the transition it has some. Okay, then it comes to the testing phase. The testing is happening every what we call the phases, but if you see the some part in the inception, but some part also in the elaboration, and then some part in the construction. But towards the end of the construction there is little more, because that's where we are talking about the testing the entire software. But earlier it was the testing, the requirement design, another part. And in the transition it is still there, some testing is there. That's basically we are talking about the taking the feedback from the users and other testing, right? And if you see the deployment, there is almost no deployment till the construction, and in the middle of the construction the deployment will start, and end of middle of the transition it will complete. Okay, and the configuration management happens only, it little starts maybe that early stage, but change management and configuration, but majority in the construction and some in transition. Project management at every stage. Okay, and environment, what kind of environment we want to use it, that we decide at the early stage. Okay, and basically at later on it has no scope. Okay, so this is basically what we talk about the RUP. Any questions you have? If no questions, then you can take like a 10 minutes break and we come back, because this is quite a bit of a learning. Inception and elaboration and construction phase and transition phase, we will learn them in detail, and then we will basically after this we finish, then we will do the practical part. Okay.